It's a great question. I don't have any sense of it. Barry, do you have any? No. Fernanda.
I have a quick point on the shift of ideology, and since I'm interested in comparative law, I think comparative law does exactly that. Looks not in a synchronic way like historians, but more in a diachronic way, how ideology shifts in different cultures. So a bit the Cherokee culture idea. So you have different culture at the same time, and ideology shifts if you just take legal discourse in different contexts. And what strikes me always in your examples, it's completely American. The fact that you would have women supporting the regulation, because in Europe right now, and last week I was at this European competition, and we were faced with these possibilities of advantaging some other women in a competition that it was a moot court competition. It was about the free market and European integration, and all the women were completely against of favoring a candidate, so I bet you that those women would be against a certain free market ideology. But this is just to say that comparative law allows to see that this is is linked to spaces and geography in a very interesting way. But I think another question to put to this panel would be, what are the effects of those shifts? And going back to your example, I was still thinking, okay, we go back to the US, where you have had affirmative action, feminism, wonderful opportunities, career opportunities for women more than in other countries, and you're still stuck with your advertising where women are still pictured in this way. Why? And I think that there is a sort of backlash that, that feminism is triggering. So the shift towards a more equalitarian society, et cetera, has then created a backlash, and this backlash is still there in your cultural environment.
In some ways, it connects, arguably, to Barry's point about what was believed in the 60s and then what hasn't been believed in the last 20 years can be understood as a kind of backlash against changing categories, changing schemas, and the kind of imagination you would call upon us to begin to apply was exactly, I think, what some people found very scary. However, I'm with you on optimism on this question. It does not waste a perfectly good crisis. Gillian.
You know, one of the questions I had when Nicole Stevens was giving her presentation kind of resonates at this point with the question that Ben posed and that we've sort of put out about whether there are moments for change. And one of the questions I had in Nicole's presentation related to causality. That is, why is it that working class people are, you know, what is the thing that the project very effectively shows that there's a difference between people who are middle class and people who are working class according to education levels in terms of how they attribute, in terms of the ways in which they describe their motivations, their values. But there's a causal question, which is, you know, what gave rise to those different attitudinal differences? And one thing that I had in my mind at the time, which ties into this broader theme, is it possible that having lacked opportunity, having been a have-not, having seen parents who were not well off, right? I mean, these are first-generation college students, but their parents didn't go to college. That they're less likely to describe, you know, the success or well-being of people or the social outcomes in terms of, you know, individual agency. They're much more likely to describe structural factors as responsible. Like, you know, after all, my family was poor, and we're good people. And so, you know, maybe you can't explain virtue in terms of individual achievement, you know, being a go-getter, being individually competitive. So there's a question at this moment, right, which is a lot of people are going to have a lot of hard times. A lot of people who were middle class are going to suffer downward mobility. People are going to see their neighbors lose their house. People, you know, who have picket fences and mow their lawns are now going to lose the house and lose the car and not have health insurance and have a sick kid, and the child will die, and bad things will happen. And so is this, you know, if the causal story that I'm speculating on is right, then we might actually be able to connect it to this moment. Maybe we're in a moment which is not a happy moment, but it actually might lead to ideological shift as people recognize common fragility.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and that as a society, when there are economic downturns, it seems that people are perhaps more receptive to messages that connect the individual to the social structures, and people recognize that not everything is within their own individual control, and that there are things that they can't control, and they have to respond to and adjust to those environmental constraints. So I think that you're right, that it's sort of a ripe moment or opportunity where those messages that are not just about the individual will be more effective and salient and motivating behavior, and perhaps changing people's views about what it is that they can or should be doing as a person in the world, and and what the market is and what the market should be. And I think that people might be more receptive to regulation as something that's not inhibiting the freedom of the individual, but as something that could contribute to the individual's well-being or to the collective well-being of society. So I think, I absolutely think that you're right in that sense.
I have to say that's not a bad note to end on, and it is 6 o'clock. So I think I will end on that, if that's okay. The promise of the crisis, that when we see situation in a new way because our situation has changed, we'll be much more sensitive to it, much more aware of it. We won't accept the old stories as easily. In a way, we'll be more like the victims of Katrina, right? And when people try to tell us it's choice, we'll reject that. The free market mindset isn't going to be as appealing. The key is that I think something else has to take its place that doesn't just sort of reinforce a new version of what was there. And there, I think it's going to be hard, and I think it will take law and lawyers and legal scholars and social psychologists and many more, and young people, lots of young people. So on that note, I just want to say here's to a new ideology, a new mindset. And thank you all. Thank you, conference attendees, and all the people who participated, and everyone who came, and of course, the students who are amazing putting this together. Thanks very much.